Are we live
Yeah.
on LinkedIn too? Or
No, LinkedIn not, but YouTube and Facebook. But we'll repost it after the live. We'll post it to LinkedIn as well.
awesome.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to Digiburn's Burnout Triumphants series. My name is Georgi, and I will be your host tonight. I'm sorry for the slight technical issues we had, but now it seems we are all on good track, and I'm super excited to introduce you to Tomi Kaukinen, currently based in Finland, but originally from Sweden, as far as I know. And Tomi is a very, very interesting individual, an achiever, burnout triumphant, and nowadays also a public speaker. Tomi went a very interesting path throughout his life cycle. He was after a stellar career and succeeded and over succeeded at what he had in mind. And he switched back towards the entrepreneurial path. And along that line, he also devoted a substantial part of his life to extreme sports, or to pushing the sport side of things to the boundaries, to the very limit, only to find out ultimately that his calling and current life purpose and mission is actually helping and enabling other startups and entrepreneurs. Tomi is currently running an initiative called License to Fail, which aligns extremely well with the values we have here at Digiburn, which happens to be the #1 place in Finland for startup and entrepreneur tips and tricks and support for those along their personal endeavors and entrepreneurial journeys. So very happy to have you here, Tom. I'll completely skip on our regular introductions, or Digiburn and Digiburn Health and what we are doing, so that let's jump straight into yourself. Nice to have you here. Welcome.
Very nice to be here. It's probably my first time. We're in Hungary, right? Or
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. Yeah. Okay. Well, so sorry.
All right.
Bulgaria. I got it. My mistake. But yeah, so first time, either if it had been Hungary or Bulgaria, it's the first time. So
perfect.
So very, very nice to be here. I think a lot of Finnish people know Bulgaria from like Sunny Beach, I think.
It sticks well with Western societies.
yeah. So my pleasure. The sun is shining also here today, so we have a nice summer coming up here.
Perfect. Well, funnily, a side comment, it seems that it may be a bit warmer on your end than it's currently being here. We're having a very funny and very changey weather. But anyway, who's Tomi? Welcome. Why are you here? Could you tell us something about yourself?
All right. I think the topic, is, burning out and similar mental health areas. And I suppose, the reason is why I'm here is because I speak very, very openly about challenges with mental health and these kind of issues. And to be honest, the graphs and the development in the Western world in particular doesn't seem to be going the right way. And if you start looking at startups or stuff like that, it attracts extreme personalities, which is the reason why a lot of people from that scene burns out. But why the reason why I ended up where I am is because many factors, and I think we're going to deal with some of these during this podcast or live event. And but the journey towards where I'm now has been quite weird, to be honest. But it all started with, as you said already, I'm from Sweden, and I made some, I would say, like, based on the time, I didn't make quite so intelligent decisions when I was young. So instead of going to finishing high school, I didn't go to the upper secondary or the gymnasium kind of part at all, because I was very tired of school, and I thought it's for nerds. And I started listening to, the year was like 91. I started listening to Metallica, Nirvana, which Smells Like Teen Spirit. They came out, and I became this hard rocker, and I thought that school was for losers. So I kind of stopped studying, which then, it led me to working in the construction, and you do the most fucking horrible work you could do. I did asbestos sanitation. So I was like 17 years old. I was doing asbestos sanitation with this big suit on, and I really, really hated doing that every single second. But if you don't have any schooling whatsoever, you can forget getting a job. Maybe in a cafe if you're lucky. But in the Nordics, you have to have like the gymnasium upper secondary degree even to get this work in a cafe, basically. So I got stuck in the construction work, and I spent like 3 years there, but I felt this horrible anxiety because I thought my life was just running away. So I heard this kind of what would you say? I saw this TV program where two Swedish celebrities were telling about their summer work when they were young, and they said that they worked in elderly care, and they said that in the nights in the elderly care, the old people basically like moan and shout during the nights. So they asked their boss, like, why are these people, why are they moaning and screaming in the nights? So their boss told them that it's because they have a lot of regrets in their life. And because this is the end station, they're pushing out this anxiety because it's too late to kind of fix that issue. So when I heard that, I was like, no. I am not going to regret, my life like that. I'm not going to be in a, elderly institution and, just like screaming my lungs out because I didn't do the things that I wanted to do. So I went to my boss and said, look, I need to like quit. And during those 3 years, I built up this massive motivation to going back to school. So I went back to school. I was like, I'm going to go to the best education I can possibly get. And then I looked at the catalogs for schools in Sweden, and I found that the Stockholm School of Economics, which was kind of the Swedish Harvard, like all the rich kids went there, and it's super hard to get in. You have to have straight A's in every subject. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get there. So I started studying like a madman. And I went back to school, and in 2 years I read the whole kind of gymnasium, and I graduated with straight A's. I was just like manically wanting to get out of the construction work. So at that point in my life, when I got into Stockholm School of Economics, I stood on on the stairs back to the school. I was thinking like, damn, I kind of changed my life from a construction worker to going to the elite school in 2 years simply by like putting in like the fucking hard work. So at that point in time, I started thinking like, okay, I can do whatever I want if I just work hard. So it kind of changed my mindset to life, and that stuck. So for the next 4 years, I studied like a crazy in Stockholm School of Economics. Then I went to work, and I got to working for these investment banks. I was doing some local asset management for investment banks like Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan, these guys. But immediately when I went out to work life, I remember my first week in work. I graduated from school, and I have a nice salary, and then I come to work, and they put this, computer in front of me, and I start typing my Excel with the cash flow analysis, and I start thinking like, this is boring. Like, this can't be work life. This is not what I'm supposed to do. And I got this huge shock from work life because in school, they tell you that, getting to work life, that's what you're supposed to do. That's where happiness lies. That's where you're supposed to make your career and stuff. And once I entered work life, I became like really, really disillusioned, like désenchanté. And, I really had a hard time coping that shock of how fucking boring work life actually was. So money is a fairly good motivator. And when you work in funds, as I did, you make quite okay money. So I thought like, well, I just have to grind my, teeth and just work hard. And I worked for 6 years, got more and more money, not millions, but fairly nice salaries and stuff. But I felt more and more empty, like all the time. And I started questioning work life quite a lot. I was like, it can't be like this. Like I can't. I started thinking about that regret thing once again. I was like, well, even if I make money now, I'm going to probably regret doing this because I don't like what I'm doing. So in 2012, I was fed up. I was like, I don't care if I don't make any money or whatever. I'm going to quit and do something else. So in 2012, I told my boss that I'm out of here. I'm going to quit and I'm going to come up with my own company and put up my own company. That failed. But it was fun. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was alive. So I started the next one. Went a little bit better, but not an exit or anything like that, but just like doing some nice business in Finland and stuff. And then the third one, we started getting some traction. We moved the offices to Spain and we worked with Spanish football clubs. And, I even hired, the one of the directors from Real Madrid to my company. And we had fucking really, really nice times. But I got stuck into this, obsession of performance. So it felt that it was never enough. So in the end, I was like, well, I need to get my kicks from somewhere because this is not giving me kicks anymore. So I started like training for Ironman competitions and on top of startup life. So it was just an insatiable need of just like doing stuff. And it eventually in 2017, I came home from a bike ride in the morning and my body just, it's hard to describe what happens, but this extreme anxiety, a lot of bodily pain. And I was like, what is happening to me? I got really scared because it was the worst feeling I've ever had in all my life. I went to the doctor immediately the next day. I was like, what's wrong with me? And it hurt so much in my lower abdomen and my lower back. I had this constant sensation that I needed to urinate, which was really weird. I had like pain in my testicles, which was really weird. So extreme physical pain. But I ran to the doctors. I did all the tests you could do. I did 2 ultrasounds. I did blood samples, urine samples, everything. And the doctors were like, we can't find anything wrong with you, man. So I guess you're fine. So I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel fine. So I took a bit of a break and the symptoms just disappeared. So I was like, what was that? So I kept going and the symptoms came back again. They were there for a week and disappeared. So I was like, okay. So I kept going again. And then they came back 1 month later for the third time. And after that third time, they never disappeared. But since I had a startup and we just raised a nice financing round, I felt the obligation to just shut the fuck up and not tell my investors that I felt really, really bad. So I decided to just zip it and keep going. Kept going for 10 months with with the company. I went to psychiatrist because after we done all the tests, they said that, there's nothing wrong with you. It's probably in your head. I was like, how can pain be in my head? And then the psychiatrist told me that, all your pains are psychosomatic. So basically it's just like burnout, depression, your body's shutting down. And I refused it to him because, I have a company to run. And it took like 5 months after that, when I had to realize that these pain and all this stuff, they were not going away. So I went to the pharmacist and picked up medication, which the psychiatrist had written to me. It was antidepressants. And I started eating antidepressants and nothing, because it takes like 8 weeks before any effect, or 6 to 8 weeks. So I started eating antidepressants and nothing happened. At the same time, the company we were in trouble financially. And after just a couple of months, I just said like, look, I need to quit. And I just dropped everything.
Tomi, that's super interesting. And perhaps before we jump into the turning point, tipping point, I quit, and so on, can you perhaps share a little bit about your entrepreneurial path, how it all started with the startup, perhaps what led you to your burnout episode?
Yeah, and I'm writing a book about that right now, and it deals with kind of the almost, I would say, impossibility of understanding what happens to you once it hits you. So I don't know still what actually caused that, because life is a complex thing. There were so many factors that were contributing, so it's really hard to pinpoint on one specific thing. But if I would say, like, okay, first of all, being in constant monetary problems, like financial issues with the company, being stressed over that, being a CEO of a company, which means basically you're responsible for everything. The employees, come and tell you their problems, and you need to deal with that. You need to deal with the clients. You need to deal with investors. You need to do the sales. You're kind of taking all the shit, but you're not getting any cred. So that's one part. The other part is like lack of recovery. So my training. So I wake up in the morning and I run like 14 kilometers, or I bike 50. And then I go swimming maybe, and at the same time I train, then I travel, constantly jet lagged. So I was basically it was just a mess, and there was no time for recovery whatsoever. And what made it even more confusing was that in Finland, for example, or let's say in general, there is a perception about what burnout, what it is. And most people, if you ask them like, what is burnout, most people will probably reply like, yeah, you're tired, and it's like that. But that's not what burnout is. I think burnout is a very, very complex phenomenon. Different people have different symptoms, and it's closely tied into anxiety. It's very, very closely tied into depression. And the problem occurs when medicine, or I would say like psychiatry, medicine, all these like very, very broad categorizations try to describe a very complex phenomenon. So we're basically trying to put words into something that it's really, really hard to define. So like, for example, like what is the difference between depression and anxiety? Or like really like, what's the difference between burnout and depression? Well, the differences that we created. And maybe you can find some specific kind of differences within, but they're still social. Like, in a way, we have defined what depression is. We as humans have defined that, okay, depression, what it is, I don't know even how to define it, is these set of characteristics we will call depression. And then we have these kind of characteristics, we will call them burnout. And then these kind of characteristics we will call anxiety. But these all act together. It's like nothing is clear. It's very, very unclear. And that's partly one of the big issues, because I could never have guessed that the physical pain that I experienced was not real, in a way. It was not a symptom of physical, actual, acute problems. It was actually a symptom of acute, like, mental problems. And this Cartesian, like, dichotomy of, like, body and mind is extremely, like, counterproductive in many ways. We tend to always categorize physical pain as something physical, but that's not true. Like, we have one body, but we as humans, once again, we've tried to separate it. We tried to think about, like, okay, like, this is physical pain, and then something else is mental pain, basically. But the world doesn't. The world is complex. It's a multivariate kind of problem, if you know what I mean. And so all these things make understanding, like, I don't even know if I had a burnout, if I was depressed. I don't know which one I had. And in the end, I don't know if it even matters. I felt bad.
And thanks for going. Thanks for going so deep and being as open as you are. Coming back to the startup and also entrepreneur theme, since we have had a couple of entrepreneurs sharing thoughts already, how did that actually influence the development of your condition? So you leading your startup, were there any, I don't know, dangerous rituals or behaviors that you were engaging with?
Rituals in regards to?
In regards of you being an entrepreneur, you leading your startup, you being in the role of the founder.
I don't know if it's the startup in itself that is the problem. I think that people who are, like, extremely driven and pursue these very ambitious goals in life are very similar to each other. And if you put, like, a high performance person, like, out in the forest, they would probably, like, start cutting down trees. So and just come up with something. So it's more about the personality traits, I think, to be honest, more than what the environment is. But the startup environment is fairly, it's not that maybe hard for people who work in startups. Yeah, you might do long hours, but as a founder, I mean, it can be very, very rough unless you have cash flow in your company and you have a lot of sales. Like, if you're constantly stressed out about when to pay the next salaries and, when is the next financing round coming, and etc., it's going to be extremely problematic for you. But in the end, I think you can almost pinpoint. You probably know that if you meet someone, you can fairly easily spot if that person is extremely driven, and you see their attitude, you see their drive, and you're like, okay, that person's probably going to get shit done. But that same person is probably, in this context, going to end up burnt out at some point in life. Because it doesn't matter what you achieve, you want more. Like, for example, when I finished my first Ironman competition, I dreamt about that moment. I trained hard, I dreamt about it, and then I crossed the finish line after 13 hours. It's like, and I felt just like, okay, is this it? Like, what happens now? And I was really empty. Like, what the hell? I've been training for this like a year, like full time, and before that running marathons and stuff. But now I've done it, and I felt really, really empty. And I got kind of almost a little bit of a panic feeling, that because I thought that achieving this goal was going to change kind of my life or something like that. But that's the problem with achievements. They actually don't change anything for the most part. They might change external kind of stuff. You might, if you win the Olympics, you might get some money and stuff. But there's also a dark side of achievements. And the dark side is, once you achieve something, you start thinking, okay, what am I going to achieve next? Because a lot of your purpose in life until up to that point has been struggling to get to that point. And once that struggle disappears, this inherent emptiness will start fucking eating you. And then you start thinking, okay, I don't like this feeling. I need to come up with another challenge in my life in order to fucking stay sane. And that's exactly what I did. I booked my next Ironman because I felt fucking I need to do something. I took a harder one in Switzerland. And that's the problem with achievements, is that once you achieve it, the emptiness that comes is fucking terrifying. And this is the reason why I think a lot of very, very successful people become extremely confused when they become successful, because they have an idea of success that is something, and once they reach that point, it's different. People in general tend to think that once you're rich or something like that, all your troubles are somehow magically going to disappear. But that's not simply true. They're not going to disappear anywhere. They're going to stay with you, and you're going to get different sorts of problems. So a lot of people become very, very disillusioned with success. That's why we see these, especially with young people, we see a lot of like stars having this fucked up period after they, become successful. You have Britney shaving off her hair. You have Justin Bieber going off the rails. You have Macaulay Culkin. You have a lot of like these people that find it extremely troubling with being successful. So I would say, we humans, we need the struggle. We need to have some purpose in struggle, because once life becomes extremely comfortable, we actually become depressed.
So it seems like a good intro to your tipping point. You were just about to share what's happened next once you burned out.
Yeah. And that's when I finally started eating like antidepressants, and I think I was like 30, 38 years old. I was sitting on my balcony, and for the last almost 20 years, the only thing I'd been doing was like trying to achieve stuff. And it was a weird feeling that once I jumped off and I couldn't train anymore, I couldn't work anymore because my body was hurting. So it was a weird feeling being an adult, starting to question like very existential questions. Like, for example, like, who am I? Who is the person behind, all this kind of very, very intense life? Like, who is this person behind all this other shit? It's very, very difficult to start dealing with once you're was he like 38? You're like, you have a deep identity crisis. And where am I going to get my kicks from? Where am I going to get my purpose from? Like, what is my purpose here? Once I tried to start working with it, my body was saying, no. You need to chill. And very, very confusing. So if you build your life around trying to impress others, which I tried quite a lot, and all that sort of things, it's the fall is going to hurt, and it's not going to hurt physically. It's going to hurt like existentially, I would say.
Okay, and identity. That's a very interesting aspect and angle to things. Are you saying that you lost your identity at the point of at the tipping point?
Yeah. I mean, totally. And I had to start thinking really deeply if like, what am I like? What do I want to do? What is my role here? So what I did was I took like 3 months. First of all, I just like, no, I'm just going to read books and try to create some organic drive to do something. So I just took it really easy, but I was struggling because like my life was basically running a company and working out. And now those two parts disappeared. So, okay, I have a lot of spare hours, what I'm going to do with my life, So coming even up with stuff that you're doing to fill your hours is difficult. But I thought that, if I just try to ignore all that and read some books and try to kind of create this urge of finding out who I am coming from within instead of from the outside. So I started writing down some like thoughts from my burnout, and I started actually I sent some mails to this local startup hub here, and I said, look, I need to help people in some way. Can I have some pro bono seminars? Can I just talk to someone? I need to feel needed, because that's one of the most like I would say humane kind of needs we have, to be part of something. And I didn't feel like I was part of anything. And that hurts because you feel useless. And that's why many people actually burn out when they're unemployed. And people find it very hard to digest, like, well, you're not doing anything. Exactly. Because once you're not a part of a purpose, you might burn out or become depressed because you are not needed. Like Nietzsche said beautifully that, asking someone for a favor is actually a lot better for that person than giving them a compliment, because being needed makes you feel really, really good. So anyway, I started talking about it, and I felt this like, wow, this was nice. And they asked me if I want to go and do some pro bono work in Nigeria and Kosovo. So I said, yeah, sure. And I, took life a little bit step by step. And I went to Nigeria, and that was a very ironic trip for me. It was. It would be cliche to say it was life changing, but it put a quite a big mark in my heart, because first of all, the whole trip was really ironic, because Nigeria is like one of the biggest countries, if not the biggest country in Africa, with like 170 million people, and I think half of them don't have electricity. And when I arrived to Port Harcourt in Nigeria, I would get picked up with this Land Rover, and we drove through like a couple of hours in the dark, very bad infrastructure, and we got stopped with people with Kalashnikovs, and I was sitting in the back seat. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. And then we come to the startup hub. The next day I went to the hotel, and I come to the startup hub. I see these incredibly innovative startups that are building like drones and like all this stuff. I'm like, wow. And they were happy. or they were very confident in the future, and it felt that they had a purpose. And I felt ironic because I came from a country, Finland, which has been ranked 4 years in a row the happiest country in the world. And there came I, the happiest country in the world, eating antidepressants, coming to Nigeria, which is not the happiest country in the world by Time magazine. And there is this huge kind of positive vibes. They have hope for the future, and they didn't think about this at all. So I felt like, damn, this is so weird that I'm here, depressed basically, and needing this, helping me. So, and that got me questioning a lot of things with the Western world in particular, and how we deal with, excessive comfort, which we have now. So that basically spurred then my career as a speaker. So I kept doing these kind of pro bono gigs. I had no intention of making money or something from that. I just wanted to talk. I wanted to share my experience like I do now. And then after 10 months of just like basically just speaking because I thought it was fun, one of the biggest companies in Finland told me that we want to have you in our gigs, like we could pay you. And I was like, well, that's very nice, because I didn't ask for this in a way. And then I got my first paid gig. And I was like, well, this is fucking nice. Like, for the first time in my life, first time in my life, I was not doing anything for neither money nor kind of external validation in a grander sense, I would say. And I got rewarded for it. So for the first time in my life, I was like almost 40. I was 39 years old. I understood that it's actually possible to do something that you do with your heart and make it your kind of base salary or base life, because I never trusted that. I always thought that if you want to make it in the world, you need to do stuff that you basically really don't like doing. So it's a weird to get late in life, understand that life will actually carry you if you follow your heart. It sounds very cliche and it sounds very, very like Hollywoodish, but that's how I felt. I was like, how is this possible? Like, I'm not doing, this is not work for me. I'm just like talking, and now people want to hear it. So that was a weird thing.
Mm. And so it took you around 10 months to recover and then start going?
No, it took a lot longer. So I did I was still antidepressants when I was doing these kind of gigs, because antidepressants make you normal in a way, but they suppress your extreme positive emotions and also your extreme negative emotions. So you're kind of in the middle, there's a blend, but life is normal. So they don't make you happy or anything. They're just like normal. So they helped me to, just get back to a normal life. So I did gigs for 10 months, but I was still eating antidepressants.
Okay.
So, so I would say I have this graph of my deep sleep, because I got this tracker, this Finnish ring called Oura. And I started tracking my sleep, because sleep was the one thing I started like deep. So the recovery in itself took 1.5 years, probably.
Okay. And if you could be able to like give an advice to yourself back then, which would that be?
I wouldn't say anything. I would let me do the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learning by doing.
No, because I'm I'm very comfortable where I am now, and I've learned so much about purpose and life. It was a really, really bad ride. I mean, pains and depression and all that, but it was all worth it, because if I wouldn't have seen the dark side of life, I wouldn't have found so much joy, and I would probably, like, if I would bet, if I wouldn't have stopped, or even if I wouldn't have stopped and just kept going, I would be one of those persons that get a heart attack when they're 50 airport. Like, that's me. So it was good that this thing happened now instead of when I'm 50 or 60, because once you're 50 or 60, the consequences are going to be a lot worse. So I'm very grateful for my burnout. There are sayings that a life without pain is a half-lived life. So I think pain, whether it's physical or like mental pain, is very, very existential. Pain is extremely existential, and once we encounter pain, we start thinking. Usually when we experience pain, our first reaction is extremely primal. We ask ourselves, why am I hurting? Pain is by nature extremely existential. Pain teaches you a lot about yourself. It teaches you a lot about life. It teaches you about meaning. So I really am glad for what I have struggled through. But so it's hard for me to say anything I would do differently. I follow, I love Nietzsche, and he talks about this concept called eternal recurrence. So you should live a life that you would be prepared to live over and over again at the same. So amor fati, love, faith.
And is there anything that you're doing differently nowadays so that you don't land back on your back as you did back then?
Yes, a lot. I don't. Well, okay. Let's take an order of basically priorities. The first thing I did was read Matthew Walker's book Why We Sleep, about the importance of sleep. And once I read that, there's also a great episode with Matthew Walker on Joe Rogan podcast, and he talks about sleep. So Matthew Walker on Joe Rogan, my friend sent me the link to that episode, and I watched it, and I'm like, damn, this dude loves sleep. And he was very passionate about sleeping and the benefits of sleeping. So I bought his book and I read it, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to get my sleep into order. So the first thing I did was to stop taking my cell phone to the the bedroom. So there was a no-go zone for my cell phone. Sleep was prioritized. Then I bought a new bed. And then those were the first things I did. So sleep was kind of the first priority, because sleep is extremely important. Everybody knows that, but few people actually, do anything about it. So sleep was first. Then I started meditating a lot more. So I do morning meditations, do afternoon meditations, basically. So calming the mind was very important for me. So meditations and sleep went kind of the first thing. And there's one thing that people don't talk about that much, which I think is good to emphasize, which is social connections. Living in an individualistic country like Finland, where everybody's supposed to like themselves, and you compare it to like Southern European cultures where family is important and you have close friends and stuff, there is a very, very big correlation and like causation actually also between longevity, well-being, and strong social bonds. So one of the best like what do you say, best ways to avoid like burnout or depression is actually having strong social bonds with friends and family. It's weird that we don't talk about it that much, but this is a very good book called Lost Connections by Johan Hari. He's also he's twice in Joe Rogan podcast, and he talks a lot about the values of like social connections in depression. So I would say like sleep, calming your mind, meditation, trying to become more active socially, because many times when you get into a depression or a burnout, you withdraw. You don't want people to come close to you, especially if you're a man, because men, we deal with pain differently. Like men in general, it's hard to talk about these things. There are studies about this too, where I think the study was something like this. You have women and men, and then you tell them that in 10 minutes you are going to experience pain. How the men react is basically, leave me the fuck alone. I'm gonna deal with this. I'm gonna deal with this shit soon, And women tend to seek like comfort from friends. So I mean, there are studies about this, and it's like that. But in particular for men, I at least just went into my own shell and I try to avoid social contacts. But that's the thing you actually should do. And I talk to people. But social connections is so important. And regards to my diet after my burnout episode, there's a question here. I've always had fairly okay diet since I was doing, these Ironman and triathlon training. So I've always been, I don't know, like empty carbs and stuff. I'm not a big fan of that. So I've been fairly okay with the diet. But my main rule still is that I try to, or actually I don't eat products at all, almost. I eat, there are no declarations of, contents in the food I eat. So I eat, meat, eggs, fish, and then I make potatoes or pasta or rice or some sauce, but I don't eat like products. I think it's a very good rule of thumb when you go to food. You like, what you see is what you get, because you don't want to buy something that has like 50 lines of different chemicals and shit. So like that can't be good, So.
And as a closing off, how about sports? Since sports seems to have been one of your drivers on your journey, how do you deal with them? How do you deal with sports nowadays?
I can't. And maybe just to clarify that I'm actually probably not 100% recovered, because it's been 4 years now since I trained consistently, and my body doesn't like it. So if I go to the gym and I do some workout, I start getting these symptoms again. There is a risk that I've done some irreversible damage to myself, unfortunately. So what I do now is I go for long walks and do some yoga, but I can't train hard yet. But probably that's something that I have to work with and, gradually come back. But for now, my body is just like, no. You're not going to work out, because it reminds the body of extreme training. And I forgot to add one thing in regards to going back to work life, which relates to actually this training stuff, is that when I did my first speaker gigs for free, pro bono, back in 3-4 months, I quit and went on sick leave. My body reacted very negatively on going back to work. So I was like, what's wrong? So I went actually to a work psychologist, and we talked about this. And she told me that my body had kind of a memory or a trace of a work that was damaging to me. And my body interpreted all work as bad work. So we started working with this cognitive therapy. Basically, she said, once you're going to a gig that you really actually want to do, your body's gonna say, because it thinks it's the same as before, this crazy work. You have to go against it. So it was kind of this exposure therapy in a way. So I had to work my way back in a way to be able to work, because my body was just like, no. So I think it's the same with training. So once I add gradually and go against it, I probably can train again. But the body remembers, man. It's
yeah. Well, I truly hope that the consequences are not going to be as long term as you describe them now. Hopefully, your body will come back to its optimal state, or the state you desire it in.
I hope so.
Is there anything as closing remarks that we should share with the audience, including perhaps a little about License to Fail and how people could reach out to you, and what are you up to nowadays?
So I think my main or key takeaway or main point, which I always stress, is that physical pain is a warning, and I think the reason why I'm stressing this is that I didn't get it, and because it's confusing when something hurts in you immediately think that it's physical pain and it's not something else. So I would say, if you start hurting or your stomach or somewhere in your body, that might be a sign of mental burnout or even depression, because the body is a complex mechanism, and sometimes the reason you have pain is because usually the first signs when we go into depression or maybe burnout is you get some sleep issues, you might get high blood pressure, you might get some other stuff. Many of us, we just ignore that. We're just like, whatever, entrepreneurs sleep bad anyway. So when pain enters the equation, you probably gone a bit too far already. Pain is a way for the body to make sure that now, guy, you have to listen, because I'm gonna hurt you. And once the pain arrives, I promise you, you're gonna listen because it's horrible. So it's a way for the body to make sure that you stop. So don't confuse pain with physical pain. Sometimes it's physical pain, and it's good to get it checked, because if it's something severe, then it's good to have it checked. But sometimes it doesn't have to be anything physical, but it can actually be symptoms of burnout. So beware of physical pain. That's my advice. Otherwise, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. Tomi Kaukinen. I would be glad to add you. And what I do now is I basically do speaker gigs. I do some coaching for some companies in regards to burnout and meaningful work and these kind of things. So I don't work that much nowadays. I have a very nice work-life balance. I try to read a lot of like history books and all these soft sides that I never cared about. I do now, and then I do some work. But yeah, I'm not gonna work myself to death.
That's a very strong thought. That's a strong closing thought. Tomi, it has been a pleasure. I'm really happy that we made it despite all the technical issues at the very beginning.
Me too.
It was a great pleasure and honor having you here, and I think the audience will have multiple takeaways from your story. And I'm very grateful for having people like yourself who are open enough and have overcome the whole situation so that they can openly discuss in front of audience and spread the word. With our talks, essentially what we are aiming at is basically increasing global awareness and helping nowadays thousands, but soon millions of people, hopefully, to recognize risky patterns early on, understand that burnout is not a game, it's a serious condition, and there are definitely multiple ways how an individual can firstly spot a burnout coming along, and secondly there are a lot of things that one can do in order to mitigate the risks or even reverse the whole process before it's too late. So if we help
Wonderful.
even only 100 people with our small online initiative with yourself tonight and today, it would actually be a great success. And
I love
ultimately, a mission succeeded. A mission succeeded. So, Tomi, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to meeting you soon again. We have multiple things up our sleeves, including our mobile self-help app, which is to be released. The beta version is to be released in a couple of weeks' time. So
Nice.
we'll make sure to reach out to you and get your feedback and ensure that we can really make a difference and work together towards burnout-free society.
You are on a very nice and important mission, and I wish you like really all the best. And please send me the beta stuff. And thank you everyone who was watching this. It was a pleasure to Bulgaria. So thank you for watching, and I hope somebody got something important taken away from my suffering.
Amazing. That was beautiful. Thank you, Tomi, and talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye-bye.